Welcome to Shortlist Women in Tech series. This is Susanna Cheng and we have Missy Yarbrough today. Missy is a senior UI and UX designer at Virtuix. She is also a mentor at Pathrise and she has experience in companies such as Rapid Deploy and IBM. Welcome, Missy.
Thank you.
Hi, how are you?
Hi, Susanna. I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. You did fine arts at the university, right?
Yes, that's correct.
When did you decide to put the focus on the digital side of arts?
It actually preceded my days at the university. In the way I found myself gravitated to technology as a youngster, mainly because of my uncle. He introduced to me like a lot of the wonders of code and tech, and then I was like, "Oh, this is so cool! How you can make so many things happen with a few simple lines of code." And then I tried it for myself in university in my first year, and I realized, "Ooh, computer science and syntax is really tricky." And while I was observing my peers and how passionate they were, and I was like, this is only the beginning of my experience and journey. I think I need to take a leap of faith and try it out with fine arts and see where I can take it. So I saw fine arts as an opportunity to really hone in the foundations of my um, just background interest in the creative space. And I figured out, well, not figured out, but rather I figured I'll figure it out later as far as how to integrate it back into my interest with technology.
Mhm. So your inspiration was your uncle, really?
Truthfully, so yes.
You have been part of big companies like IBM, and you are now in a company such as Virtuix that has 34 employees, according to LinkedIn. What is the main thing that you value from a company?
The main thing I value from a company is the willingness to tackle on complex and challenging problems in a honest and iterative way. And I know that's a lot of multitudes of different things coming together, but the willingness to understand that as humans, we're not perfect, but there's always room and opportunity for progress to make things better. And I think that attitude right there like helps bring in so many more possibilities and open discussions to the table.
Mhm. That's great. And how diverse do you find the teams that you have worked with during your career? Have they
Uh,
been?
it's actually been a pretty interesting myriad of diversity on my teams. There have been moments where I've been the only woman on the team, and then there have been moments where uh, women have outnumbered the men. And then, like in terms of diversity and backgrounds from minority groups, like that has also ebbed and flowed during my years at IBM and then at Rapid Deploy and Virtuix. And I find that the diversity um, it's definitely not what I expected from like a small town background of Mississippi, of just like, wow, there's just so many different ways that diversity can be expressed, including LGBTQIA plus, and then like just culturally how people perceive and engage with the world. So I find that my experience with diversity has ebbed and flowed over the years.
Mhm. Do you think that gender is something that matters for companies in terms of progression in tech careers or not really?
I think it makes a difference, especially depending on cultural backgrounds. For instance, in customer support spaces, I find that being a woman may actually be a detriment to the experience because just how cultural perception has kind of tainted the and undermined the value that women can bring to the table, especially in providing solutions to problems.
Mhm. What do you think companies could do to have more diversity within their teams?
I think that companies, if they take a really earnest look at what is the current situation, because I feel like with a lot of companies, there is a blanket treatment of like, oh, we're going to address this at scale at large volume, not
Mhm.
really taking a closer look into what's really fun fundamentally driving the problem for like diversity and recruitment. Like a lot of the tactics have been very traditional in the sense of like they've worked for a certain target group in the past, and in this new era, finding resonance with your new audience. Who are they? Where are they coming from? What means of access do they have to view opportunities? Is it the same as the people that you've been currently engaging? Because I know that particularly for college recruitment engagements, sometimes it is about prestige and like the reputation of the college, but there's plenty of people that are super talented and super ambitious and hungry that come in from lesser backgrounds, including small towns like where I come from, where it's like, oh, these companies may not find value in what I can bring to the table. So I find if companies may take a closer look and examination of like how they're sourcing and how they're understanding diversity, I think it would lead to a better return rate rather than treating on the other side of the funnel with great scale and um, broader approach.
Mhm. Thank you. And I wanted to ask you, what did you enjoy most of your role?
So as a UX UI designer, I really appreciate the ability to take on ambiguous spaces in chaos. And I say chaos in a good sense of like, there's often times where I get brought into a project where there's not really a clear understanding of what's happening, but it is my mission and objective to provide clarity through design process and thinking, understanding what's happening, what are the opportunities, and very foremost, what's the real problem here? Uh, Similar to like I'd say like a doctor, just like I don't want to treat the symptoms necessarily. I also want to find and diagnose the source of the issue. So that way, we might have the maximum output for changes in improving the product experience for our end users and for the business.
Sounds quite interesting.
Mhm.
Is there any project that you are particularly proud of and you want to share with us?
Uh, so there is one project that I last worked on while at Rapid Deploy, and the reason why I was like super proud of it is because of the tight knit collaboration and communication between my design team, which composed of myself and another designer, and as well as my development team in South Africa. We worked hand in hand to make this experience for helping dispatchers and call takers better understand real time updates in their systems through this feature that I was introducing called bulletin boards. And the feedback that we got from our end users during testing was absolutely humbling because they frankly were like, we wish we had this in our system today. Like, when can I get it? Can I get it tomorrow, today? And I was like, this is great. This is great to hear positive reception of feedback and to have like such close dynamics with a team that also is just as eager and passionate to bring it to life. So I think fondly on that project just because it just seemed like the accumulation of so many different aspects coming together at once.
That's wonderful. I mean, like hearing such a nice feedback is it makes you proud, right?
Yes.
What is the main challenge that you face at work?
Currently or overall?
Um, it's up to you to give me that answer. Um,
All right.
the biggest challenge that you have faced, even if it's now or in your career.
So I think my biggest challenge at work has actually been my confidence with myself. And I say that coming in from 8 years of experience. For a little bit of background and reference, I come from like a town that's like maybe 30,000 people, very removed from corporate spaces and understanding of like how technology can bring value to people. The communities that I grew up with are very distrustful of technology. And I had to unwire some of my insecurities around, do I belong in tech? Is this a space I should be in? And especially coming from a fine arts background into a, a, a mammoth like IBM with cloud computing, I really felt displaced. So I was like, what am I doing here? How can I help provide value when like I like all I really know is how to design visual assets? And over the years, it's been a progress and journey of recognizing that I did have a sense of imposter syndrome, and two, like that my story isn't as uncommon as I thought it was. I had this impression that everyone in the industry had it all figured out, and the reality is that we're iterating, continuous delivery at every space, even socially, and that's where I've started to slowly um, just teeter off of that sense of lack of confidence. And that's especially been helped by talking to more people, listening to more people and their stories. And people come from all sorts of different backgrounds in this field. So because of that, I feel like there's just so much opportunity for people to get themselves into technology. Um, but definitely confidence has been my biggest challenge in technology. And I'm proud to say that like today, for the most part, I find that this is where I should have always been. This is what the direction of my life has gravitated me to since the first early days of discovering how to design through this online game called Neopets. For those of y'all that may be aware of new MySpace and LiveJournal days. I'm part of that community that grew up with the advent of HTML and code and has seen the progress of what internet technology has brought to people's daily lives. So, yeah.
From my point of view, is quite inspiring what you just said. The thing with the confidence is the imposter syndrome is something that affects to many people, and it's quite inspiring. Thank you. I'm going to get into data now. According to research, only 3% of women choose an IT career, and just 5% of leadership positions in the sector are held by women. What is your perception, Missy, about women in tech?
My perception of women in tech is that they there is a culture and dialogue, at least in the spaces where I've been at, where those conversations aren't as necessarily interested and engaged to like, let's talk about the latest technology. Let's nerd out and like share what's going on within the tech space. I find that other things within social expectation and norms are more um, prioritized, and that's where the conversation opportunities for tech like gets lessened and dampened because other things are like quicker to access, quicker to pay off. And with tech, like it is a kind of a slower pace in the sense of like things are definitely rapidly changing, but it takes a lot more work to make it happen, especially with communicating with others, being collaborative, being open and receptive. And I find that maybe the cultural clash of like what is needed to be successful in this field may clash with like how people are brought up, particularly for women. Um, but that is my perception. As far as women in leadership, I find that at least from my experience, maybe it's because of the lack of my confidence on the outwards expression. But I've received feedback in several interview engagements where I wasn't perceived as showing enough leadership qualities. And then realizing and recognizing that, oh, apparently I need to be like broadcasting my direct contributions, how I've like initiated and pushed for this certain agenda piece. Even though philosophically, I feel like leadership is more of like a service model in which I help do the work alongside other people and guide and coach them alongside their journey. But for the most part, like it's definitely underwhelmed as far as a community topic to speak about and share about. Um, I wish I wish there were more women I could speak to about technology in my space, but I also think there's another caveat too that technology isn't just strictly knowing about code and hardware. Like there's definitely like plenty of people that are needed in specific roles for tech companies, people that are needed to help like source and like identify people for certain teams, like making and building that team. Uh, that takes a special talent to be like, oh, I think you have great opportunity and potential to succeed in this space. People that are really well acquainted with finances, I think that would be really helpful for um, like the tech company as a whole, because without a good balanced bookkeeping and like accounting, I don't know if like you're going to be as successful for the long run, especially with financial forecasts. So maybe just expanding the horizon of what does it look like to be in tech, I think would be very important in changing the conversation and dialogues and perception around being a woman in tech. That there's just more to it than just than code, than QA, and the more technical side. That there's just as much necessity need for being a human contact person.
That's quite important.
Mhm.
um, what about stereotypes? Have you come across any stereotypes in regards of women in tech?
Ooh, I feel like that this has been like a little bit of lot of my life, especially as a Asian woman. The stereotype that as an Asian woman that I would be very passive and very quiet and timid may have been true at one point in my career, but nowadays I find that that's like the hard part. Like oftentimes I would be very challenged to not to be quiet, and I think that's one thing about stereotypes with women in technology is that there are like there are probably lots of different stereotypes that people bring to the workplace, and that makes working relationships very challenging to now have to contest that and be like, I'm I'm there are places where stereotypes um may have served this person in their past, but in this context and regard, I think it actually inhibits and tunnel visions the possibility of perspective that this person can bring to the table, to the value of what they step into the arena with. Because like specifically for my background, I've always have had my um, racial identity blasted in my face because I was a minority that existed 0.1% of the 30,000 population. So that is equivalent to, I think, maybe um, 4 dozen, yeah, 4 dozen people. So 48 people. Like imagine only seeing 50 other people in your town that look like you. And because of that, like it was very much impressed upon me that I would only be as much as my stereotyped identity. And so coming into the tech space with stereotypes for women, um, that has been a very big challenge of just like, okay, how do I contest the stereotypes of women where it's not perceived as competence, as vocal, as engaging, as meaningful. And that has been a very big challenge over the years for navigating that journey. And I find that this conversation around stereotypes of women sometimes bleeds into other spaces of technology. Particularly, like I'm going to reference my partner here, who has worked extensively in customer service. He actually has had many clients over the phone where he actually requests to like, may I please talk to your significant other, who I'm assuming is your wife or your girlfriend, or just a woman, because they are more willing to listen to directions and follow them and ask questions, versus like the stereotype, like, oh, women aren't willing to like listen and acknowledge these certain spaces. And it's like, actually, it's quite the contrary if you just like be willing to challenge that perspective, that perception and bias that the person may have. So that's where I find challenges within stereotypes has been within tech.
How do you think we could end with stereotypes? Is there anything that we could do individually?
Individually, I find that having an honest, hard conversation and dialogue, to be willing to be like, okay, let's take this a step back. Why is it that you don't necessarily trust my skill set and my confidence in this space? I would like for you to get really specific with this feedback, so that way I might take action. And if it's not on me, then maybe it's a perspective of how the other person is approaching the situation, the group of team. And I find that like these conversations and dialogues really focus in on an inward conversation that doesn't necessarily put them on like social blast. And I find that to be like really contentious, especially with the like current climate and everything. But if we take time to like really understand, okay, why is it that you've had this perception history? Is there anything I could do to like revise this? And I also understand that this is a lot of work for the person that has to like challenge this. But if the person is willing to like step forward and like make that conversation happen, by all means, like that conversation needs to happen. And as far as like um, being very direct and taking it heads on, of like asking the whys. Why is it that this even came about? Why is it that you continue to like approach similar situations with this? Is there anything that maybe I can do to help like assuage this perception? Because at the end of the day, I don't want to be a threat. I want to help you um, make this product awesome, and we I can't do that without your collaboration and your trust. And if this trust is built on like false fallacies, then we can't move forward in a very effective direction. So that is my hypothesis for how to address um, the stereotypical um, pain points.
Mhm. When I have introduced you before, I was talking about Pathrise, and I would like to hear from you. What exactly is Pathrise?
Pathrise is a startup company that focuses on helping people get placed at their dream jobs. So we have focuses on sales, software engineering, product design, and marketing, and so many more that we've actually launched this year. And at Pathrise, I am a part-time industry mentor. And what that means is that I take the industry knowledge that I have um, gathered over the years as a product designer, and I help use that knowledge to help others that are trying to better understand how to navigate the product design interview space. And that includes like branding, portfolios. How do you make that first good impression with a potential hiring manager? That's honestly, when we get right down to it, a stranger. How do we help connect to another stranger on the other side and reach out to them with like the value points that we bring to the table, that our perceived differences are actually our strengths? And my favorite part about that experience is helping people find their stories from their backgrounds and communicate that forward in their engagements with whoever they decide to speak to. And it's been really fulfilling to help people get to their dream teams and companies, places that they never thought were in their grasp or reach.
Mhm. Sounds really good. Um, I mean, because you are kind of volunteering at first, right? Is how does it work? Could you explain a bit about it?
Yeah, that's good. So yes, I kind of was voluntary, but not for Pathrise. My side story is that I've actually have helped 2 dozen, maybe 3 dozen people throughout the course of my life prior to Pathrise, with getting them with new jobs and opportunities simply by editing the resume, giving them a little bit of feedback and advice, of like maybe approach your strategy a little bit different by really doing a little bit of preparation about who you're going to be talking to, what their interest is in terms of the company and what they're trying to achieve. And that has definitely brought a lot of interesting life adventures for many of my friends. And like I help bring a couple dozen friends from Mississippi to Texas, and we've all been established in different companies throughout the Austin area. So that's been really fun. At Pathrise, it actually was an opportunity to make that pro bono experience into a paid one, at least part time. And that's just been really fascinating on my part of just like, okay, this is great. This is great how I can still uh, develop my ability to speak to product design and also connect with people through active listening of like how do they bring their background history to the table in a way that's clear, concise, and engaging.
Thank you. And Missy, last thing, I need to hear from you before we finish, a message that you want to send to people, especially women, to get into IT careers.
Ooh, this was a great one. The message that I would have for women that are trying to break into IT is be willing to take those bold risks and that leap of faith. Go ahead and put your name out there. Put that application in. Let the world tell you no, but don't tell yourself no. And I say this from a space of like lack of confidence at one point in my life, and also to the encouragement of many people in my life to be like, why not? You have nothing to lose and everything to gain. And at the end of the day, like rejection is not a reflection of your value and worth. Just go for it. Go for your dreams of like wanting to talk to people in tech, whether it's like through AI, machine learning. There are plenty of people that would love to nerd out about those specific spaces. And if you want to find yourself like, let's network and connect on LinkedIn, uh, why not? Just go for it. Just send that message. You never know what one opportunity might lead into. And I say this as somebody that I'm going to bring it back to my college days where I made a friend through one of my hobbies called cosplay. And that friend at the time was just working through college. And at one point, he found himself at the kitchen staff at Facebook. And I was like, that's so cool. I don't think I'll ever like work at Facebook. That's wild. And so he invited me to tour the campus at Facebook, and I was like so enamored and so like, wow, this is what like a life in technology could be. Like, I don't think I could ever get there. And let me tell you, you can, because I was able to revisit in a more formal capacity in February 2020, where I was invited to interview on an on-site engagement with Facebook, and I was like, 10 years ago, this would have been undreamed of for me. Like, wow, like this all stemmed from one opportunity, one engagement, one relationship, one friendship from 10 years ago that seemed absolutely out of my reach. And here I am, like being able to step into the possibility of what's happening of the now. And that's, I mean, if I had like totally just what said no at some points in that conversation engagement, there's a pretty strong chance that like maybe I wouldn't have wound up um, where I should have been at. And may, and I'm not going to be here to be like, I believe in destiny, but I definitely believe in the potential and power of one. And you can't have the maximum potential of one unless you go ahead and just say, why not? Let's go for it.
Thank you very much, Missy. Thank you for the message. Thank you for your time today. And also, I'm really glad, I'm really happy for you that you have found your dream in IT and technology. And again, thanks.
Thank you. Much appreciated, Susanna.